In the previous video, we created a database named contacts.db. And in that database, we created a table named contacts. And we used this SQL statement to create the table. You can see that we have three columns in the table. The first one is contact ID, and that is an integer. It's also our primary key. We also use the not null modifier so that the table will not accept null values for that column. The next column is the name column, and it stores text values. And then the third column is the email column, and it also stores text values. So we created the table, but we did not insert any rows into the table. That's what we're going to do in this video. Specifically, we're going to insert these rows into our table. And we're going to do that with an SQL statement. We're going to use the SQL insert statement. So this is the general format of the insert statement. It starts out with the keywords insert into, and then we have the name of the table. Following that, we have a set of parentheses that contains a list of column names, column 1, column 2, and so forth. And those column names are separated by commas. Now, after that set of column names, we have the keyword values, and then we have another set of parentheses with a list of values that are separated by commas, value 1, value 2, and so forth. And the way that the statement works is that value 1 will be inserted into column 1, and value 2 will be inserted into column 2, and so forth. So after this statement executes, we will have a new row inserted into our table, and these values will be inserted into the corresponding columns. Now here's an example of how we're going to insert the first new row into our table. Insert into contacts, and then inside parentheses we have contact ID, comma, name, comma, and email. And then we have the keyword values, and inside of parentheses 1, comma, and then we have the string Katie Allen, comma, and then we have the string katie@example.com. So when this statement executes, the value 1 will be inserted into the contact ID column. The string Katie Allen will be inserted into the name column, and Katie's email address, katie@example.com, will be inserted as a string in the email column. And that's how the new row will appear in our database. Now, of course, you'll recall from the last video that in order to execute these SQL statements, we have to use a method, a cursor object method called execute. So this is what the statement would look like. Now let's just assume that we have a cursor object named cur, and we're calling that object's execute method. And then here we're passing as an argument a triple quoted string that contains our SQL statement. Okay, well let's switch over to idle and let's see how this is going to look in an actual Python program. So here's a program that I've written called insert contacts, and you can see that the first thing that we do is import the SQLite 3 module. Then we have the definition of a main function, and then we have some code that executes the main function. So in the main function, we connect to the database. Now you'll recall that we created this database in the last video, so we're not creating it here, we're simply connecting to it. And you'll also recall that I used this raw string to hold the path of the database because I wanted the database in a very specific location. So this gives us a connection object called con, and then here in this statement we're getting a cursor object so that we can execute our SQL statements on the database. here in this statement, we are calling the cursor objects execute method, and we're executing that SQL statement that we just looked at. We're inserting the first row that has Katie Allen's information. Then in this code, we're executing another SQL statement where we're going to add a second row. This one has Jill Ammon's information. Then here in this statement, we're executing another insert statement to insert a row with Kevin Brown's information. And then here, we're going to execute an insert statement to add a fourth row to the table, and this one contains Elisa Garcia's information. So this will add 4 rows to the table. This statement is going to commit those changes that we just made, and this statement closes the database connection. Now, this program doesn't display any output on the screen. It simply adds these rows to our database, and that's it. So when we run the program, we won't see any screen output, but we should see the program run, hopefully with no error messages. So I'm just going to use my run module command here, and that brings up the Python shell. Basically, it executes the program, and we do not see any error messages. So at this point, our database contains these 4 rows. So in the next video, we're going to look at how to query the information in the database. So you'll see how we can pull this data out of the database.